I don't like trans people. Did he say that women become adults at like 15? He's like, I'm here to protect the children, but women are adults at 15. He's literally contradicting Jesus. Quote unquote debate college students where they have complete control of the microphone. And it's like this like Christian pastor guy who like debates people, and he had some videos about quote unquote transgenderism and how to think logically about transgenderism. Me, as a facts and logic enjoyer and defender of transgenderism, God's strongest soldier in the war of transgenderism, I thought that that would be the perfect opportunity to figure out the logic of transgenderism.
What are the main arguments saying as a Christian that homosexuality and transgenderism is right or wrong?
Ooh, let's go into it. All right. Tell me, Christians, why should we hate queer people?
Read through the Bible is a book built on man-women relationships. It's built on procreation.
Procreation is something that's mentioned in the Bible. However, also there are additional ways of life. Even if you go back to like the Talmudic Judaic texts, you would find that they actually legally and socially recognized 6 different sexes that had associated gender roles and expectations. That's not all that the Bible says, but okay, let's continue.
When you have relationships that either don't do that or do that in a way that can bring a lot of pain and suffering, whether it's polygamy, whether it's adultery, whether it's fornication, the Bible is...
How does fornication bring pain and suffering? What? Is he going to say that homosexuality brings pain and suffering? I want to hear
going to come out against that because it goes against the purpose as to why we're here. From a natural law perspective...
Is he saying like the purpose is to reproduce?
The man and the women together, obviously man and women are put together to procreate.
Okay, so his argument is that it's bad if it doesn't procreate. There are like infertile people. Is it like bad or wrong for them to get married? I mean, they can't procreate. Under this logic, that would be bad. Also, he is directly contradicting Jesus here. In Matthew 19:12, it says, "For there are eunuchs who were born that way, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are those who choose to live like eunuchs. For the sake of the kingdom of heaven, the one who can accept this should accept this." Eunuchs in the society, one of the gender roles that was associated with the eunuchs was being celibate. It was also one of the different genders, sexes, that was recognized by those societies at the time. It's contradicting him on both points, because this is an example of Jesus saying, these are people that are changing from one of our 6 legally, socially recognized sexes to another. Part of that would be a commitment to celibacy, to not procreating. Like, Jesus says you should accept it, but this guy's not accepting it. He's literally contradicting Jesus. That's crazy. I didn't think it would be this easy to dunk.
The only thing a man and a woman can't do alone is procreate.
I need to think a bit more on that statement. That's an interesting one. Okay, the only thing a man and a woman can do or can't do alone is procreate? I mean, we can think about things that are just, like, literally impossible. Or I guess you could talk about, like, somebody who, like, lacks a certain biological function that also couldn't do that alone. I don't think that statement is really meaningful.
We need one another in order to procreate. So the Bible and even natural law points to the fact that nature points to the fact that...
Thank you, Fuzzy Wuzzy Bear. The only thing a man and woman cannot do alone is play patty cake, because patty cake is a 2-player game. Yeah, that's the classic dunk I'm going for. Yeah, it's just something like literally any 2-person activity. That's hilarious.
A relationship is the ideal. One quick thing about transgender.
Why is that the ideal? Like Jesus says that eunuchs are fine, so why is man-woman marriage the ideal?
Transgenderism, if we could. This, again, is a very sensitive issue, but I think...
Oh yeah, let's get into transgenderism. Now we're speaking my language.
If you really think about it, transgenderism presupposes fixed genders.
No. Also, like, most trans people are supportive of the concept of gender fluidity, or that people can have gender identities which can shift or vary within different settings or moods or times. Like, most trans people generally accept that gender is kind of fluid. The idea of gender roles within a society is absolutely fluid. Like the idea how we currently consider like blue to be the boyish color and pink to be the girlish color. If you go back like a couple decades, that was flip-flopped. We used to consider pink to be the boy's color and blue to be the girl's color.
Because if I'm a man biologically, but I think I'm a woman mentally, then I have to have some idea of what a man is and some idea of what a woman is to know there's a difference, to know there's a mismatch.
You would have to have a concept of gender identity to be transgender. That is true.
And I also have to have some idea of what a man is and some idea of what a woman is to want to make the so-called transition. Because if gender is completely fluid, transgenderism would make no sense at all.
Why not? You can recognize gender, and you can also recognize that you can move between them, and that's gender fluidity.
And one of the issues in the LGBTQ community right now is there's a bit of an eternal war going on between the L, the G, the B, and the T. Why?
Aw, there's a war going on? I wasn't informed.
Because if the T has its way, if the T's have their way, there are no genders, then the L...
Whoa. He thinks that T means gender abolitionist, not transgender. Okay, so first off, gender abolitionism is base. And I think that he's gonna get into like, oh, but there's implications of gender abolitionism. But guess what? They're base too. We'll get into it. I'll let him make the argument first.
The G and the B don't exist.
Yes. That's actually the end goal of gender abolitionism. And here's why. If we live in a society that is gender abolished, that is so equal that we don't assign any kind of differential expectations to men and women, then people have all of the freedom to date who they want, to express who they want, and there's not even language that is needed to describe gay people, bi people, straight people, because they're all just types of people who all have equal respect, value, dignity, and there's not existing a bigotry against them. Like, in the gender abolished world, we don't even really need language to describe, like, gay, bi, trans, other than, like, perhaps some kind of, like, utility purpose of explaining, like, the types of people that you're interested in dating. Although that would also definitely be different in a society that didn't have gender roles. The point is that, like, the end goal of social acceptance is that an identity no longer needs to exist because it's no longer marginalized. For example, like a politically actionable identity label, something like the term queer. If people are not marginalized or ostracized for who they want to date or how they want to express their gender, then there's no reason to be labeled queer, because queer describes people who are marginalized or oppressed or seen as deviant in their gender identity or expression. That's the good society we want.
Because how can you be gay, lesbian, or bisexual if there are no genders? That presupposes genders.
Yeah, it does. And the world would still be better without genders.
In fact, even the feminists are concerned about this. Why? Because if there are no genders, there are no women. And if there are no women, there are no women's rights, which is why J.K. Rowling...
No, that's not it. In the gender abolished society, the entire point is that it's all equal human rights for the people that we currently consider men and women. So there's no need for women's rights. Also, in, like, the gender abolished society, you could still talk about things like female rights, particularly with respect to, like, access to medical care or access to, say, like, period products, for example. The entire point of gender abolition is that all of the rights would be equal, and so there would not be a need for, like, further pushes for rights at that point. But the idea that, like, all trans people are on board with gender abolition, or that trans people in their current advocacy are trying to abolish gender within the next, like, presidential cycle or whatever, is absolutely delusional. Like, the idea of gender abolition is much more so like an idealistic utopian idea. We have such a long way to go before we could even consider abolishing gender. Like, while there are still material differences in the lives of men and women, you really can't abolish gender without addressing those material differences and experiences and roles and expectations, which all, you know, differentially harm men and women in different ways.
The author of the Harry Potter series is sticking to her position that if you're going to say gender is fluid, you've just ruled women out of existence, and she won't stand for that. Guess what? She's right.
So gender fluidity and women can both exist simultaneously. Some people even describe themselves as, like, gender fluid women. Like, that's not a contradiction.
If you look at this logically, not emotionally, there are a lot of issues. In fact, Dr. Paul McHugh from...
We just said we got to use the logic and not our feelings.
Johns Hopkins University, he's a psychiatrist, likened transgenderism to anorexia. He says, if there's a mismatch between your mind and your body, which is what happens in gender dysphoria, and what also happens in anorexia, we don't try and affirm the person's psychological state. We tell them that their psychological state doesn't align with reality.
Yeah, why do we do that? The reason why we do that is because telling an anorexic person that their delusions about their body weight are real causes them to harm themselves further, and it causes them to go deeper into starvation, and it worsens their outcomes. And so we have medical guidelines, which are backed by research and data, which show that for trans people, actually the opposite is true. Trying to tell a trans person, no, you're not the gender you say you are, you can never be the gender you say you are, that actually hurts the trans person, and it makes them worse. Conversion therapy is literally psychological abuse and torture, is what the research shows. Now, however, gender-affirming treatment and gender-affirming care is shown to improve the mental health and well-being of trans people. They're very different conditions that have very different treatment paths. That's kind of just how medicine works. You know, you can maybe think of some conditions as like kind of similar, but they often have very, very different treatments which work because of very subtle differences between the conditions. The key difference between like anorexia as a delusional disorder and gender dysphoria is the same thing as like is the same thing as the difference between a dysphoria and a dysmorphia in the medical literature. Typically, a dysmorphia would refer to somebody that has a deluded false belief about themselves, and that in indulging that false belief, they're harming themselves. Meanwhile, a dysphoria is when they can starkly recognize reality, but they're just uncomfortable with the reality. So, for example, somebody that has like a dysphoria about their body weight could be somebody who recognizes that, yeah, I'm actually at an unhealthy weight for myself, and I want to change this, and I'm taking steps to change this. Meanwhile, a dysmorphia would be somebody that has a false belief about their body weight, where they look in the mirror and they don't see their body as it actually is. Now, gender dysphoria is not based on any false belief. Trans people are aware of what biology they're born with. Trans people are aware, you know, that they were raised either as a boy or a girl, and that people generally perceive them as either a man or a woman. They just desire to change that. So that's why it's a dysphoria and not a dysmorphia, and it's disanalogous to the anorexia case.
We try and fix them psychologically. We don't try and fix them with surgery. We would never say to an anorexic, you know, you're right, you're overweight, let me give you liposuction. We would say, no, that would be harmful. If there is a mismatch between your...
Oh, he actually just debunked his entire argument. That would be harmful. Yep, and if you look at the medical literature, conversion therapy is harmful for trans people, but gender-affirming care profoundly helps trans people. He just debunked his own argument.
Your mind and your body, you fix that problem with psychiatry. You don't fix a mental issue with surgery. Yet that is what many in our culture want to do.
There are actually other cases where if you have like some kind of mental dysphoria, the actual correct treatment path is to alter your body. For example, some people, say like a cis dude, for example, could feel very dysphoric about not being muscular, about not being a gym bro. And this can cause a real discomfort, which is psychologically distressing. And generally, if they hit the gym, beef up, and they're doing this healthily, say monitored by doctors, put on their muscle, feel much better about themselves, yeah, generally this is a good thing. It's not wrong to want to like change your body. There are plenty of ways that you can change your body that are perfectly happy and healthy. And we have medical guidelines backed by data that show that trans people wanting to change their body actually improves their lives, improves their mental health. We also have this one. Is there a difference between gender and sex? Let's find out.
I had a question. One of my professors a few years ago, kind of going back to the whole transgender issue, she made the distinction.
Yeah, let's go back to the transgender issue. I'd love to be described as an issue.
Between gender and sex. So sex is your biology, and that can't change. But gender, you know, some of the things.
The idea that your biology can't change is really crazy. So biology as a science is just the study of living organisms. It's the study of your body, it's the study of your anatomy, it's the study of hormones, all of these other things that relate to your body as a living organism, as a biological creature. Literally, taking any medicine changes your biology. Like the reason why if you have a cramp and you take ibuprofen, the reason why the ibuprofen works is because it takes advantage of your biology to change your biology, at least temporarily, to relieve you of that cramp. He might be talking about, like, your chromosomes don't change. That's true. But biologists recognize sex as a lot more than chromosomes. Often they're talking about things like your gonads, your gametes, your hormones. Plenty of these things you can either change or remove or at least alter in some ways. Like, yeah, we are totally biohackers. That's what modern medicine is. There are ways to alter DNA. One of the big things that people don't really understand about DNA is that there's a difference between the genes themselves and how those genes express themselves. So genes essentially are kind of like computer code. They have some inputs and they produce outputs. And these inputs are things like hormones, things like environmental factors. If you change the hormones in your body, essentially your DNA code is going to be like, oh, I have hormone testosterone, do this, versus I have hormone estrogen, do that. That's why every human being is genetically encoded with a breast size, like from birth, where if their body is estrogen dominant for essentially a duration of puberty, they will develop that genetically encoded breast size. While you're not like changing your chromosomes by medically transitioning, you're changing the way that your genes express themselves. You're actually inducing real biological changes in your body that are using natural mechanisms. It's the same way that like taking ibuprofen uses your body to relieve cramps, but like taking hormones is going to use your body's natural genes just to get them read in the female direction or in the male direction, depending on which hormones you take.
Things like how you dress or the different roles you take in society, that's what can be fluid and that's what you change. How would you respond to that distinction, and would you agree with it or disagree with it?
Well, historically, no. Gender and sex are the same thing. But if you want to say that some people...
It says historically gender and sex were the same thing, but that's like not even true though. There were plenty of societies that had gender roles which were not just one-to-one tied to sex. We can look at various tribal cultures, even like early human societies that were rather gender equitable or that allowed people to choose their gender role despite their biological sex. And also like various early human societies' categorizations of intersex humans has varied vastly, both in like how they perceive them as a biological category and how they perceive them as like a social gendered category. There are absolutely societies that distinguish this for as long as human history has existed.
While having a definite biology, have a different belief system about, well, see, it depends. It depends on whether or not they're thinking their biology is what it is, and they just have what they think are feelings of the opposite sex. Okay, that would be called gender dysphoria. That's what that is. Okay. The problem is...
He's stumbling so much. Like, he was just asked, is sex and gender different? And, like, he's stumbling so much to provide an answer. I didn't think this question was that hard for him.
It seems like our culture is saying the biological sex means nothing.
No. Even trans people recognize that biological sex has meaning. That's why, for example, transsexual people medically transition, because they want to change aspects of their biological sex, which they do through HRT, for example. Trans people know that when you go to the doctor, you're supposed to tell your doctor, hey, I'm a transsexual, my biology is this, because we understand that biology matters for medical treatment, for example. So he's just wrong there. Trans people do care about biology.
And following your heart, your gender thoughts are everything. And first of all, I don't think that's true. I think
The only way he can debunk sex and gender are not the same thing is by saying that trans people believe that biology is fake and that their feelings determine everything. Like, that is such a ridiculous mischaracterization of what trans people actually believe. Like, if trans people believe that our thoughts dictate our biological reality, why would we medically transition? If we thought that, if I believed that I could think, okay, become female, and that would magically change my biology, why do I take estrogen every day? It makes no sense.
Can't change your biology, you can change your mind. And secondly, it creates all these difficulties in our society. Not only from sports, but women's locker rooms, where a man can just say, I feel like a woman today, and go in.
So even if trans people didn't exist, there would be nothing stopping a man from just like walking into a woman's locker room. That's how these spaces work in practice, is people just self-identify into one of those spaces. And yeah, if you were like a man walking into one of those spaces, people would probably be uncomfortable or scream at you to get out. That's literally how society currently works.
And this has created problems, obviously. So people can say whatever they want, that there's a difference between the two.
So wait, problems exist because trans people exist? I mean, like, transphobia is a problem that exists because trans people exist. So why don't we, like, come up with solutions to the problems rather than just saying, well, problems are a thing.
I think quite obviously that you can't change your biology. You can change your mind. And if you're going to say there's a difference between your sex and your gender, then you are talking about what is called gender dysphoria.
Wow, he really couldn't even debunk that. Like, he kind of just conceded it at the end. We see him concede that there's a difference between sex and gender, and then any other time he tries to conflate sex and gender, like, he knows he's full of shit. And then this was the clip that he did that went really viral. This had 1.5 million views, and I think the reason why is because he's talking with, like, a biology student.
What do you have to say for people
who comes off kind of arrogant, and YouTube conservatives love it when arrogant SJW gets demolished by facts and logic. So let's hear it.
who don't fit in your definition of man or woman? I'm a biologist. I understand the biology. Are you saying that a woman is only a person who has two X chromosomes and a man who is someone who only has an X and a Y chromosome?
I think that's the scientific definition, yes.
It's actually not, because they're...
So he says the scientific definition of man and woman is based on chromosomes. If that's the scientific definition, then, for example, somebody that has Swyer syndrome, where this would be somebody that has female biology physically, yet genetically they would have XY chromosomes. To him, that would be a man. But, like, if you Google pictures of people with Swyer syndrome, they look completely, like, typical females. I mean, I'm guessing that, like, once he's confronted with an example like this, he's gonna be like, oh, but the exception doesn't prove the rule.
There can be people with XXY. There can be Y chromosome inactivation. The way that this biology works is that you have genes. Those genes make proteins. Those proteins develop the traits that you define as men and women. They develop the features that you define as male. They develop the genitalia. But you can be a woman with female genitalia and be XY. You can be a man, but you can have XX chromosomes.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about, Grace. You're talking about a very rare condition known as intersexed.
One in 100 people experience.
Ooh, we got the intersexed. I don't know why people add, like, an ED to the end of words like intersex or transgender. Like, how do you do, my fellow transgendereds? It just sounds like it's just bad grammar.
It's chromosomal differences in sex.
Okay, but not 1 in 100 have different genitalia or ambiguous genitalia.
I believe the numbers for ambiguous genitalia are actually, like, bigger than he thinks they are. Yeah, okay, it's estimated that about 0.1 to 0.2% of all live births undergo genital corrective surgery because they have ambiguous genitalia. That's literally, like, 1 out of 500 that are born with ambiguous genitalia. And he's like, it's not like 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 200. It's 1 out of 500. That's really not that much less than...
And what do you say to those people?
Well, what you say is that's a situation that is not the norm.
Destroyed with facts and logic. That's not the norm. So the person that he's talking to literally agrees with that. Essentially, her original question was, how do you classify people that fall outside the norm? And the reason why this is actually logically sound is that if they're willing to make exceptions for intersex people who are not the norm, why can't we also make exceptions for trans people who aren't the norm? Like, there's no way he could attack that point, but I'm not sure if that's the direction that she's going to take it.
We're not saying that they're not people, obviously. As I understand it, maybe you know more about it than me, when you do have a truly intersexed person, at that point, either the parents or when they're old enough, they can decide which way they're going to orient themselves.
Isn't it, like, so sad looking at how conservatives talk about intersex people? Conservatives view intersex people as some kind of, like, abomination deformity that needs to be corrected, when, like, plenty of intersex conditions are entirely benign, do not have any kind of long-term health complications, and it's just like, you just have some mixed sex characteristics, and that's kind of cool. That's really cool. That's really fascinating. I think that shows beauty in human diversity and in our biology. And so much of the reason why, like, intersex people end up going through these procedures is because they're coerced or forced to. The reason why there are surgeries performed on babies' genitals is because of people's fear of intersex people. The reason why so many intersex teenagers are pressured to go on hormones or pressured to get literal top surgery, like intersex men, for example, is because of this fear of intersex people. It's really, really sad because, like, it's just another way that a body can exist and there's nothing harmful about it.
And they can get the appropriate surgery. But that's not what we're experiencing in our culture.
That it's okay for people to decide their gender.
In that situation, but that's not what we're talking about in our culture.
Ooh, here's another good argument you can make. If they say, okay, well, it's okay for intersex people to decide their sex or their gender, you can make a decent claim that being trans, or at least being transsexual, is an intersex condition of the brain. Based off of the research we have on the biology of trans brains, based on the research we have about genetic factors which are correlated with being trans, you can make a pretty decent case that being trans is an intersex condition of the brain. Therefore, by your own logic that intersex people are allowed to choose, trans people are just a different type of intersex, so let them choose. I really wonder how he'd respond to that argument, but I doubt she's gonna make that one.
What we're talking about in our culture are people with perfectly normal functioning sexual organs trying to have them removed and trying to transition to another gender, which is impossible.
I mean, it sounds like a free society to me. If somebody wants to receive an elective surgery as an adult, and there's like medical guidelines that show that it's beneficial for them, like that's their American freedom. Imagine if somebody made the same claim about like hair transplants in men. Like older men get hair transplants. You know, you're trying to surgically, medically correct people's natural hair biology, whatever, which is scientifically impossible, to borrow some of his language. I mean, it exists, you can do it, and if it makes people happy, I would rather give them that freedom. I don't know, I'm just so pro-freedom.
Scientifically.
Have you ever doubted that you're a man?
Mm-hmm.
You've doubted that you...
Oh, have I ever doubted I'm a man? No, I have never doubted I'm a man.
Then what do you say to a...
Aw, almost got him. Have you ever doubted that you're a man? Yeah, oh, that would have been so good if we got a closeted trans person.
Transgender person who has never doubted their gender. You're saying that we all change and that obviously transgenderism is a product of some kind of phase, but you've never doubted that you're a man. So
no,
where's your development of this change?
She's not doing a good job holding him to his points, and that's why she's coming off rather poorly here.
Grace, I'm not denying there are people truly with gender dysphoria. I've already said that. What I'm saying is the way out of that problem is not surgery according to the data.
What is the way? Is he going to say that the data shows that conversion therapy is better? Is that what he's really going to argue?
Psychiatry is the way out of that problem.
I also don't agree.
Holy shit, he's literally saying that conversion therapy has better results than gender-affirming care, which is just completely false. Please cite some studies to show that conversion therapy works better than gender-affirming care, because they don't exist.
Agree with your statement that after surgery, you implied that transgender people are more likely to commit suicide after surgery. But the statistics say that transgender people are more likely to commit suicide because of arguments that you make that they're invalid.
No, I'm not saying they're invalid.
I'm just saying that you implied that it's the surgery that's causing suicide.
No, it's
rates.
not. What I'm saying is the surgery doesn't fix anything. That's the point. It's practically the same rate, whether they have the surgery or not.
If you woke up...
That's not true. Like, trans people who have acquired the gender-affirming care that they desire have a much lower rate of self-unaliving. And the people that make this claim, like he's making, are just misrepresenting the Swedish study, like they always do.
Up and grew breasts today, would like them to be removed? There are many.
Say that again?
Have you ever heard of gynecomastia?
I had it.
And so did you have that fixed?
Yes, I did.
Ooh, hold up. He was intersex. He was intersex, and he chose to have his boobies removed. Okay, if she plays this right, this is a good gotcha.
And did that make you feel affirmed in your gender and comfortable in your body?
No, when I was in the Navy, nobody knows this, by the way. Now I'm revealing I need a HIPAA form to sign here or something.
You don't have to talk about it.
No, what I'm saying is, yes, I've had that myself and had it surgically removed when I was in the Navy. Yeah.
And do you feel more comfortable in your body and more affirmed in your gender because of that?
Well, it wasn't a gender thing for me.
Wasn't a gender thing? Why did you want your boobs removed then?
It was the fact, well, I can't even get into it now because it had nothing to do with my gender. Okay. So
what did it have to do with? Why did you want your boobs removed?
It had to do with
Oh, he's stumbling. He's stumbling.
It had to do with the fact that it looked really odd.
Why did it look odd? Did it look odd to you because you think that men shouldn't have boobs? Because that's a gender thing.
Let me just put it that way. Okay. But Grace, my point is...
You need to hold him on why did it look odd. You really need to hold him on that point. Because he's gonna have to make the gender point if you hold him to that.
Is if we truly care about people...
Also, yeah, he is arguing that him removing his boobs has nothing to do with gender. But like trans people seeking breast augmentations has everything to do with gender. Those can't be simultaneously true.
Are we going to try and force them down a road, particularly as children?
Oh, okay. Yeah, he knows he's lost the point so hard he had to pivot to now we're forcing children down a road. This idea that we're forcing children is absolutely insane. Because if a child who's like talking to a gender therapist at any point is like, you know, I'm not trans, or maybe they even get on the puberty blockers and they're like, yeah, I don't think these are right for me. I want to go through my natural puberty. Then they can stop at any time. Like, they can literally stop at any time. The teenager who receives gender-affirming care has to continually choose to continue their treatment. That's how this works. It's not a forcing thing.
Into a solution to a problem which is proven not to be a solution.
You just said that having that surgery made you feel better about yourself.
That has nothing to do with transgender surgery. I wasn't
You have to ask them, why did the surgery make you feel better?
changing my sex. I was having breast tissue removed. Okay? I was always a man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So.
No, she's not doing it.
And say that I have XY chromosomes, but I'm born with female genitalia.
No! Oh my gosh. You need to ask him, why did getting your boobs removed feel better? Why did you feel weird having boobs?
Female body types, but I believe I'm a man. Should I not be allowed to have that breast tissue removed?
As an adult, you can do whatever you want.
Yes, that's fine.
My problem is with the children.
I mean, it seems like he has a problem with the adults too, based on all of his other videos. Like, that's just kind of a mischaracterization of his point, but he knows that saying, I'm trying to protect the children is a stronger point. So he's really changing his position there just to whatever's convenient.
That's where I'm having a real problem.
Is there a magic button at 18 that instantly makes you feel like you know who you are and absolutely what your gender is?
The nuance of age of medical consent is not a really good like topic to be getting on into that debate. Really, like, what you want to hammer him on is his own gynecomastia and why it made him feel better. She missed the easy dunk so bad.
No, well, I think for women it's probably like 15. For men it's 37. To be honest with you, okay? Because men don't develop as quickly.
Boys are stupid. Ha ha ha. What a jokester.
As women, all right? But no, we've just chosen 18 kind of as the adulthood crossing point.
Wait, also, did he say that women become adults at like 15?
I think for women it's probably like 15.
Yeah, he did say for women it's probably like 15. Oh shit, we got another Matt Walsh case right here. We got another Matt Walsh where women are adults at 15. Oh, yikes. Yeah, a 15-year-old girl is not an adult and is not ready to, like, have babies.
Teen kind of as the
He's like, I'm here to protect the children, but women are adults at 15.
Adulthood crossing point, although for some issues it's 21, like drinking, okay? So, no, maybe it's later than 18, okay? My big problem, and I would say...
The reason why he says that it's 15 for women, but 37 for boys, is because he's into underage girls and DILFs. Those are his types.
This is somebody who's 37. That the surgery does not appear to help anyone. And if you want more data on this, you can go to sexchangeregret.com.
Not look at like peer-reviewed literature. Just go to sexchangeregret.com. That's so hilarious. Oh my gosh. Yeah, did you know that if you go to IHateTransPeople.com, you can find like a lot of really good data on how I don't like trans people? You ever hear of that?
Sexchangeregret.com. But I wouldn't even be talking about this issue unless I thought the current way the culture's going is hurting people. And it is. Why would I bring all this abuse on myself?
What abuse is he bringing on himself? It was an earnest effort from Grace, but she could have done a lot better. Oh gosh, this guy would be easy to destroy in that setting. Absolutely. If you're gonna do like one of those debates where they control the mic and whatnot, this guy would be the one to beat. Oh, okay. I found the website. So it's an image of some mountains, and then you scroll down, and there's some clearly biased articles that are like, here's an anecdote. Here's one person that regretted being trans. Here's one person that regretted being trans. That's not data. That's anecdotes. Okay, yeah, he does not have peer-reviewed studies. Got it. So I went to your website. It's just like a picture of some mountains and then some anecdotes of like a couple people that regretted transition. All right, crazy stuff.